Hello. I've worked at Make Noise for kind of a long time. While workshopping some patch ideas over the last week or two, I started recalling some time I spent working on the production line and specifically patches that I used to make while testing systems. So we have many very detailed and specific procedures for testing the proper working functionality of every single module that we ship. For modules that eventually go into systems such as Resynthesizer, tape and micro sound music machine, or previously the shared system and others. We do this module test and then later we test them again after they're installed in the new system, making sure that they're all connected to power, properly calibrated to work together, and just generally humming like songbirds. So in the earlier days of the shared system, I would test again every single jack and knob in the system in an efficient but slightly less specific and repeatable manner. And as I did this more and more, I developed strategies for testing each portion of the system, and eventually I settled into a routine that left the DSP modules of the day, the Phonogene and the Echophone, for last. And I would make a patch where these two modules clocked and fed each other sound, sometimes recorded off whatever I pulled from my phone, sometimes scraps of noise or sound from within the system. And since I was testing all the I/O of the system, I would cross-patch every jack on the two modules. The Echophone's freeze function and tempo input allowed me to do something like a continuous looping of whatever went in it, but that freeze is also destructive, so the sound would continuously decay and evolve as well before being re-fed by the next sound. I eventually got this patch down to a science, where the cross-clocking and the variety of possible sonic material created rhythmic coherence and interest. But the actual process was the same every time, so I could perform the task efficiently and sign off quickly that the system was ready to sell. The patch never quite sounded the same twice in a row, so my ears and brain weren't in too much danger of fatigue from repetition over several hours. Now, in the late fall of 2016, as some nearby wildfires created a hazy look and quietly intense smell in our region, I took some sonic inspiration from this weather or environmental event. At the time, we had a demo system next to the door in our front entrance, and my desk was right next to it. When we took our afternoon break, I often challenged myself to whip together the best patch I could in the 15-minute time slot. The smoky season we were going through, as fall started to turn into winter, gave me a particularly melancholy vibe that put to mind some of the sounds I'd gotten with that test patch. So for the week or two that we had those smoky conditions, I made a new version of the patch each day and recorded my favorites of the results. Well, that was about 9 years ago. It was a couple months before announcement of the Morphogene, which means the shared system was using a Phonogene. Today, in the Resynthesizer, we have a Morphogene and a mimeophone instead of a Phonogene and Echophone and reverb. Of course, we do have a Spectrophone instead of a DPO and so forth. So the patch, as I try to recreate it, is obviously not going to be exactly the same. I've altered and expanded it for this system, or more accurately, I've built it entirely from scratch because I have to admit I do not have a very clear memory of exactly what patch connections I used to make. We're gonna go on vibes here. So we're starting with a steady pulse from Tempe, which will molt to do a couple things. Trigger a maths channel, and clock the mimeophone. We use this triggered maths channel's output to do two things. We'll modulate slide on Spectraphone's side B. We'll also open the DXG channel that it's patched to. Now, let's trigger the other side of the maths with the slower tempi channel. And this one will do something similar, but modulating the partials of side A. And open its DXG channel. I chose these sounds and modulations because they're fairly indistinct in terms of pitch. We'll be able to focus our ears instead on the interlocking rhythms and maybe the atmospheric nature of overlapping echoes. Let's also randomly modulate the color parameter on the mimeophone. And that DXG channel 2 will take its output to the morphogene, then through QPass, and the band pass outputs back to the aux input. I've set my morphogene up to record only what's at the input, so I have the sound on sound turned all the way to the right, meaning we're not actually hearing anything coming through it right now, not until I record something. But let's set up something we can use to record. Let's go ahead and clock the morphogene with that original pulse as well. What else? Let's clock Renee's X channel and modulate mimeophone's rate with it. And we'll use the X gate output to clock our top maths and take its unity out to modulate slide on Spectraphone side A. This side's in noise mode, so that is adding noise filter sweeps to its output, but they only arise if and when this coincides with the partials modulation from the bottom maths. If I turn partials up, we hear it. Turn that back down so that it comes up only sometimes. Let's also modulate mimeophone's zone by cycling our last channel. Since the mimeophone is clocked here, both rate and zone modulation are changing repeat times in ways that fit the clock. Use that end of rise pulse from the same cycling maths channel to flip the mimeophone's buffer periodically. And let's take the sum output for some filter sweeping on QPass. Periodically hold the mimeophone too as well if we like. Shall we shift the tempi channels? Seeing what happens? This may shake up the whole patch, but let's do it.